If you're a fan of the Indian football team, then in the next 2 weeks, you'll be looking forward to perhaps the one thing that you had been waiting for quite a while, which is seeing the Indian national football team in action in a top-level international tournament. That is, of course, because the AFC Asian Cup, which is Asia's premier international trophy, well, it will be taking place. India have, of course, qualified. Although the group that they're in probably doesn't give you the best of chances of making it into the knockouts, well, it's still the chance to get to see the Indian national team perform at a top level tournament, and that is saying something. Just yesterday, we broke the news that, of what exactly, let's say, the Indian squad would look like for the AFC Asian Cup. And now head coach Igor Stimac has actually addressed a press conference where he touched upon a lot of interesting pointers. But in this video, what we'll do is we'll take a look at just about a couple of the more interesting ones, which includes, by the way, a subtle dig, you can say, at the Indian domestic football system, and also talks about what he expects from his players, not only in the AFC Asian Cup, but also as a long-term goal going forward. If you are wondering what exactly that dig is at the Indian domestic football system, well, it's actually specifically at the top league of the nation, the Indian Super League. And we'll get to that right now, straight here. When he was asked about, what it is that they do as the Indian football team, what they do in preparational camps, he said very clearly, he prefixed his entire statement by saying that the pace of the ISL, or the Indian Super League, is far below the pace of international football. So, when players arrive in national team camps, we focus on sharpness, compactness and shape. Now, there's two real ways of looking at this particular statement from Stimac. One is that he could very well just be telling the truth. I mean, yes, the Indian Super League has improved things as far as domestic football in the nation is concerned, but it's not like the level of domestic Indian football is high. Even if you're considering purely in Asia, they're probably not up there with, say, the top 10 or even 15 or so leagues right now. That's a fair assessment. However, it's also worth noting is that conventional wisdom does tend to suggest that club football is more often than not more fast-paced and intense than international football, which more often than not carries a more relaxed, let's say, tone. So you'll not see players be going full tilt, pressing full-blooded for 90 minutes in an international game, but that does tend to happen more often than not in club football. So him saying this can be seen as a bit of a veiled dig. If you're wondering why it is he'd feel the need to take a dig at the ISL, well, then you only need to go back to the whole fiasco of the Asian Games, wherein you'd remember that after some let's say a lot of public campaigning from not just Stimac but also a lot of other people to the Indian Sports Ministry, the Sports Ministry then chose to allow the Indian football team to take part in the Asian Games, despite the fact that they didn't meet the SAI criteria itself of being a top 10 ranked nation. They didn't do that, but they were still allowed to participate because, according to Stimac, it would give him as well as the players some time to kind of test out their tactics going into the AFC Asian Cup. Then, however, what happened was that the Asian Games coincided with the start of the ISL, so 90% of the players that Stimac wanted in his team couldn't get them because the ISL club said, no thanks, we're not releasing these players. We need to look at our own interests. We've invested a lot of money into these clubs. We want the clubs to succeed, and the Asian Games doesn't come under the FIFA window, so they were not really obligated to release players. We did a ton of videos on this around that time. You can go back and check that out as well. But in this case, it's easy to understand why exactly it is that Stimac feels a little bit sore, but I'm not so sure how much it helps him taking a bit of a dig like this in that regard. Either which way, he moved on, and he did make a lot of interesting points about, let's say, India's hopes of whatever performances they can put up in the AFC Asian Cup, and also more importantly the long-term goals that he has from this particular unit. The first thing that we'll dwell on is what he expects being the goals from the AFC Asian Cup, and he's very, very frank when he says that, look, obviously we are rank outsiders in our group. This group is much stronger than the last Asian Cup. I am not putting any pressures on players about results. And that's a fair assessment, because if you go back to the 2019, the Asian Cup, the AFC Asian Cup that was held, you remember that India's group was actually a lot weaker than this one. You only had maybe one good team, whereas this time around you've got Uzbekistan, you've got Australia, and you've got Syria. Now, Uzbekistan are one of the more physical teams in Asia. Australia well, they were playing in the 2022 FIFA World Cup, and they made it to the knockout rounds as well. So levels above where India are right now. And Syria, whilst not regulars or anything in the FIFA World Cup, did almost make it to the 2022 edition of the tournament as well. So definitely a lot stronger than India, even if you go by let's say a metric as simple and in many ways even flawed as the FIFA rankings. All of them rank much higher than India. So it's definitely an underdog group for them, in the sense that they very much are the underdogs. So it's easy on him to say, and it's actually good, saying that, look, there's no pressure for results. But then if there's going to be no pressure for results in the AFC Asian Cup, then what exactly is the long-term goal looking at this current group? Many of whom, like you have the likes of skipper Sunil Chhetri, who are definitely more experienced at the international level, so would be expecting something more than just taking part in friendlies, making it then to these sort of tournaments, and then hoping to just show up there and be happy. What are the long-term goals? Well, Stimac was once again very frank. He said that, look, our final goal is to qualify for the third round of the World Cup qualifiers. We need to find stability, and we will try to play a fearless brand of football. So that's two goals there in one, because the short-term goal is qualify for the third round of the FIFA World Cup qualifiers. That's the short-term goal. Long-term goal, find stability and try to play a fearless brand of football. The third round of the FIFA World Cup qualifiers, for those of you who are wondering, well, right now the round of FIFA World Cup qualifier which India is playing is the first one, and if they do well in that, then they make it to round number 2. However, if they make it to round number 2, then potentially they have a chance to go to round 3. So it's a whole thing. It's very convoluted, dare I say, a system, and I'm saying this as someone who actually went over that system, did a video on it. You can go and check that out also. It's called How India Can Qualify for the FIFA World Cup of 2026. So the goal that he's setting is them making it to round 3, which means that they might not actually be good enough to qualify for the FIFA World Cup. But if they can even make it as far as round 3, it will be seen as a good accomplishment, to which I again also say fair enough, because again, if you can make it into round 2, and if you finish in the top 2 of round 2 in your respective group, then you're assured automatic qualification. If you just about miss out, you then make it to round 3. So round 3 actually does seem realistic and in line with the kind of progression that you would expect from this team. Because again, one of the major criticisms of the Indian team is, despite the fact that you see some improvement here or there, when it comes to the big stages, they are nowhere near. And that's okay, because again, there hasn't been a lot of investment or expectation in the side, and of course that is something that only comes with time. Progression is not linear, and even though you've had about 10 years of the ISL, that's not going to be enough to go and disrupt world football. So to make it even as far as round 3 would in fact be an accomplishment, because that would mean you came very close to qualifying, just about missed out. That's fair. That's a good accomplishment. But as I said, definitely one of Stimac's more interesting press conferences. Many of you will argue and say which one of them are not, because he just more often than not does tend to speak what's on his mind. Is a very frank character, doesn't really hold back. Someone who knows exactly what to say to get what it is he wants. And in that sense, I think this was an interesting one. But what do you think about what it is he said? Do you agree with his dig towards the ISL? And do you think that they should be striving for more in the AFC Asian Cup and even the FIFA World Cup qualifiers? You can let us know that in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap that bell icon as well. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Don't forget to download the AajTak app. And if you're already on the channel, go ahead, check out some other videos we've done as well. For now though, from my side, it's goodbye.